Hello, this is a tutorial video for this part here from Lab 2 of Basic Part Modeling. So we'll go through some of the basics of how to draw this part, and throughout this tutorials I'll also show a lot of things that you should not do when drawing a part like this. So let's get started. At first, I'll show you the overall process of which I've used. So here's the actual finished part, and if over here in the part browser you can see the different features of which I built the part with. So I'm going to grab this end of part here and drag it up here. So obviously I started with a blank part. The first thing I did was make the overall box, and then I started cutting away at that box to create these extra features. And I cut this hole here, and then I made one hole there, and then I mirror that one hole to the other side, and then I can mirror those two holes to the other end as well. And finally I cut this hole here, the circle part. I've added color as well, so the color popped up there. And then the last thing I need to do is add these fillets on this edge, which is a fillet's just a rounded edge. So there's the fillets there, so you can see that. So that's the overall process that I'm about to walk us through. Alright, so you'll, with Inventor open, go to File, New, and make sure you're under the metric tab and you start a new millimeter part here. Hopefully you've already made a millimeter part your standard part, so you're not creating it in inches. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is to create that first, getting back here, I want to create this first extrusion here. So we'll create a 2D sketch. So click here on Create 2D Sketch, and then now you have three options here of planes that you can select, and really you could select any three of these. Notice these planes are oriented with this view cube up here in the top right, and you can see where it says the top there. And so I'm going to select this plane here to be my first plane, since I'm going to extrude up. Now, one thing if you notice about this part, it's important to see that it's symmetric on the horizontal line and symmetric along the vertical line. Now that's important to realize for what we call the design intent. So when I'm starting to draw this part, I want to think about my design intent. So no matter how big I make this part, whether I use bigger dimensions rather than 200, I use 300, I always want this part to be symmetric around this horizontal and vertical line. So I want to take advantage of that. So here, this little yellow dot, yours may be a different color, but that yellow dot represents the origin. Now I want to first create a rectangle. If you just click rectangle here and then do something like this, you'll see that that rectangle, the center of the rectangle is not on the center of the origin. This is okay to do, but it's really not the best thing to do. So I clicked undo there. What I would recommend is using the center point rectangle here. It's called a 2-point center. So if I use this type of a rectangle, the first point I click will be the center of the rectangle. So there's that rectangle. Notice now it's centered around the origin. Okay, so that means I'll have a plane through the middle of this part. Okay, so there's the overall shape. Now let's go add dimensional constraints to it. This dimension here, I believe, was 120 millimeters, and this dimension here is 200 millimeters. And we can change these later. Notice the color turned blue. Okay, so I'm going to delete this 200 to show you the difference there. Notice these edges, the left and right edge, are black. This means it's not constrained. I can grab it and move it. I haven't defined the length of this top line here. Now after I define it, the color of these lines will change. So let's define that. 200. Notice everything is blue now, which means it's fully constrained. If I try to click and drag it, I can't move it. It means it's fully defined or fully constrained. Okay, so I finished the sketch, and now I want to extrude this up. So I'll click on extrude, and it already guessed that I wanted to extrude that one rectangle. It's the only profile that I had. And I want to extrude it a distance of 75 millimeters. There we go. Okay, so there's the first box there. Okay, now from this, what do I want to do? Let's go back, look here. I want to cut out this hole here. Okay, we see it's a depth of 40, a width of 80. Now there's two ways you could do this. And I think the easiest way here is to draw a rectangle on the top and then extrude it down. So now let's create a sketch on this top surface. So I just click on the surface and then click on the create a sketch button there. And you can see the view orients to be perpendicular to that plane. Alright, now let's create a rectangle. Okay, now again, notice that this hole here, this cutout hole, is in the center of the part. So I want to take advantage of that, and I want to use the center point rectangle. Okay, so my first click will be the center, and now come up and make sure it snaps to the edge up here. Okay, that's important because that means the edge of this rectangle I just drew will always be aligned with the edge of the first extrusion that I made. Okay, so I clicked escape there to get out of that tool, and now notice I need to add a width constraint here. Okay, notice if I click this edge and try to drag it, I can't move it. Those two lines are locked together. Okay, so I could click a dimension constraint now, and let's add that dimension constraint to be, is it 80? Yeah, it's 80 there. Okay, notice all the lines are blue. Okay, now I can finish that sketch and now click extrude. Now notice this time it doesn't know which area I want to extrude. Do I want to extrude this one or this one? Well, we obviously want to extrude that middle one. So let's click on that area. And it's going the wrong direction. So you can flip the direction here. Just switch the second direction, and then I can add a distance to that. The distance is 40 there. Okay, so now I've added that cut. Okay, now let me demonstrate one thing that's important to see why I created that this second extrusion in the middle. Okay, let's say I want to go change the dimensions of that first rectangle. Well, I added the dimensions of that first rectangle from this sketch 1. So I click the plus button here on that first feature. Now I can edit this sketch, and let's go change these dimensions. Let's make it 300 instead of 200. Let's see what that does. Okay, notice this hole did not change. It's still always in the center there. And that's really nice for my design intent, because if I have a change of design later in the design process, well, the part still holds the overall form. Okay, I'm going to go back and show you a way not to do this hole here. Okay, so now what I did is correct, but I want to go back and just watch me do this. You don't need to actually follow along and actually delete this like I'm going to, but I just want you to see what not to do. Okay, here's what not to do. So let's create a sketch. If you use just this regular rectangle tool here, so you click on that, and then you do something like this. Okay, well, the problem is this rectangle now is not centered. Okay, well, you could try to center it. It would be a little bit hard, but you could try to add some dimensions here. Okay, so you could try to add a dimension. Let's say this and this one is 80. We know that, but that still does not center the rectangle. You see that? It can slide back and forth. All right. One thing you could do at this point to try to center it This is just making extra work for yourself. You could create a line called a construction line here that goes from this corner to this corner, and then you can add a constraint. Let's click on this. This is called the coincident constraint, and make that center on top of the midpoint of that line, and now it's in the middle. Okay, so you can finally constrain it in the middle. It's easier just to use this center rectangle option here. Much easier. Okay. All right, let's get back to where we were here. All right, there we go. Okay, the next feature that I'm going to add is the hole. Okay, now we want, if you notice here in the drawing, it says 4x and then the diameter symbol 16. That means the diameter of each of those 4 holes is 16 millimeters, and all 4 holes are exactly the same. So since all 4 holes are exactly the same, what I don't want to do is draw the hole 4 separate times. So I want to draw it one time and then just mirror or pattern to get the other 3 holes. So let's do that. Let's do one hole here. Okay, I'm going to sketch on this top face here. Alright. Now you could just draw a circle for your hole. I'm going to use what's called the hole feature, and so what I'm going to do is just select a point that I want to put the hole, and then go back and tell what type of hole should go there. Okay, so I'm going to select this point here, and let's just click approximately where it is. It's somewhere there. All right, now I have to locate where this point is. Let's go look at our drawing. Notice the dimensions that are given. It's dimensioned from the center of this hole to the hole on the top side. So that 60 millimeters is given between holes. We could calculate the distance from the edge to the center of the hole, but again, notice that these holes are symmetric about the horizontal line and about the vertical line. So I want to keep that symmetry when I'm actually making the part. So to keep symmetry, we can create what's called a center line to help us have symmetry. So click on line, and then come over here on the format and click on center line. Okay, I'm going to create 2 center lines. Let's first start it at the origin here. Click once, drag out somewhere outside the part, and click again. And now click escape to get out of the line. So there's one center line. Now let's make another center line from here down to here. Okay. Now the reason I make these lines is it makes adding the dimensions easy. So now I click on the dimension tool, I click on this point, and now that center line, and notice where the dimension goes to. It goes to the other side of the center line because it knows that you're going to put another point on that other side, or another hole. So now let's click and let's make that 60, and I can do the same thing to the vertical center line here. So this would be a distance of 120. Now notice that point has turned blue, meaning it's fully constrained. Okay, you can't move it anymore. Alright, so I've defined where one hole is, and notice I use center lines to do that. So now let's finish that sketch. So all I've done in that sketch is defined a location. Now let's come up here to this hole feature. Let's use this hole feature to actually create the hole. So click on hole feature. Now there's different types of holes you can see here. Okay, a counter bore hole, there's a countersink hole. We just want a regular hole here. And notice the termination down here. It could be on distance, which means it only goes a certain distance into the object. Well, we want our holes to go all the way through the object. So on termination, I can click on through all, and then I can change the diameter here. The diameter is 16. Okay, so notice it's giving you a preview of what's happening. That hole goes all the way through. Okay, You can also change things about the hole over here. I could make it a tapped hole, which means it has threads on the inside, so you can put so you can screw a bolt into it. So there's different options that you can do with this hole, and we'll show more on that later. Alright, so this would be different threads you could add to the hole, but we're not going to deal with that now. Okay, let's just make a plain hole here. Alright, now click OK. Okay, so I've got one hole. Now I want to go through and I want to mirror this hole to this side, and then make, so basically I want to make these other 3 holes. Okay, so let's do that. Let's go to mirror, right here. Click on mirror. Now the first thing I click is what I want to mirror. I want to mirror this hole, and now I need to come down here and select the mirror plane. Well, now I need to have a plane that goes through the middle so I can mirror this hole over here. The planes can be found under origins. Let's click there. It's not that plane, not this one, that's the bottom plane. Let's click on that plane there. Okay, now that green circle shows the preview, and that's what I want. Just click OK. Alright, so now I've mirrored this hole here. Let's do the same thing to mirror these holes up to the top over here. Okay, but notice this save reminder just popped up. This is actually a great reminder because if my computer crashed, I would not have this part saved. So you need to go through and save the part. Just click on save. And now I've already created a folder here for exercise 2, which is under my lab 2 for part B. So under this, let's save this as mount 1 demonstration here. There we go. So make sure you save your work. Okay, save my work now. Okay, let's continue mirroring. So again, why don't you practice this? Now that I've showed you how to do one mirror, you practice it first before you continue watching the video to try to make those second holes. Alright, let's continue. So I'll click on pattern, or sorry, mirror. I'm sorry, click on mirror here. I want to mirror this hole, and I want to mirror this other one. I could select it here. You can also select it over here in the part browser. Okay, now I need to select the plane, so click on mirror plane and find this plane here, and now I've mirrored it over. Okay, easy enough. Okay, now we're getting closer here. Okay, one thing I need to add in is this hole, or this semicircle cut that goes right through the top edge there. So let's add that in, and we can do that with an extrusion. Okay, now which plane would I want to start on? Well, I want to, let's select an edge here so I can draw a circle and then extrude that circle as a cut. So now let's create a circle. I want the center of the circle to be on this top edge, but I also want it in the center. Notice my cursor is yellow. If I move it to the middle, it snaps green. That green point means that's the middle of that line. So now let's create a circle. Let's add a dimension to it. And that dimension, it's a radius of 15, which means a diameter of 30. Okay. So I can finish that sketch. And now extrude that circle that I just made. Well, that's going the wrong way. Let's switch directions and make it a cut. So I'll click on cut. Now how far do I want to extrude? Well, I could add a dimension here. Okay, so let's say it goes all the way through. Let's make it 200. Okay, now you don't want to do this, but I'm going to continue on and show you why you don't want to do this. Okay, so let's say I make it 200. Well, if I do that, now let's go back and say, oh, let's say your boss comes to you and says, hey, I need the width of this part to be 250 millimeters. You say, okay, no problem, boss. Let's go select my first extrusion I made, and let's make this distance 250. Well, what's the problem now? Okay, you see the problem is that this semicircle hole no longer extends all the way through the part. It stops at a distance of 200. Okay, so rather than making this extrusion, I can just double click on it to edit it. Okay, so rather than making this extrusion a distance, let's click this drop down arrow and make it through all. Okay, through all. So that means whatever length dimension I have to change, that hole will always go through all the dimensions. I can change this back to 200 there. Okay. All right, now we're getting somewhere here. Okay, what's one of the last things I need to do? Well, I need to add in these. Oops, sorry. I need to add in these fillets here. It's just little rounds here. Okay, so let's go do that. It's done with the fillet tool. So select on fillet, and now I can just click on the edges that I want to round. I want to round this edge and round this one as well. Okay, and the radius of that would be 10. There we go. Okay. There we go. Now that's the overall idea of the part. Now if I look at this part actually, here, if I look here, I can see my holes don't look exactly in the right place. There must be some reason that my holes are not in the right place here. Oh, sorry. If you look here, these holes look too close to the edge. So I need to go back and look and see what dimension have I missed that actually that makes those holes too close to the edge. I can go through and just kind of check from the beginning. Okay, I can clearly see the 200 and the 120, that's correct. I can look at this next one here. That was a distance of 80. Okay, that's correct. That's no problem. Alright, so now let's go look at the location of this first hole here. Okay, now here's my problem here. Okay, I've made this dimension 120 when what should it be? It should be 140 there. Okay, so I can go back and edit it. Notice it changes this hole. Now watch this. When I change that one hole, since I've used the mirror feature, all the other holes will update. So click on Finish Sketch, and notice not just one hole moved, but all 4 holes moved, which is really nice. And so this is one important reason for creating your part from the very beginning with the design intent in mind. And my design intent here was that this part be symmetric about the center line, a horizontal center line and a vertical center line. Alright, now one thing I have not done with this part is define the eye properties yet, which is very important to do. You can think of it as like a title block, adding information of when was it drawn, what material is it made out of, who drew it. Let's go down to the eye properties, select the eye here, the eye properties. Under the summary, you need to add information here. The author, I'll add my name here as the author. Now you may not see the importance of this right now, but later on when we're making 2D drawings on sheets of paper, you'll see how this is really important. Let's say this is Lab 1, Exercise 2, Part B here. Okay. Now you can add lots of other things, maybe who's your manager, that would be the teacher here. You can add other comments here. This is a video demonstration. You can add lots of comments here. And this is very important to do if you ever go back and want to wonder who drew it, some information about it. Even if you're working on someone else's part here, you would be appreciative if they documented that part well. You can go to the physical tab here and you can assign a material. This is neat. So instead of just a generic, you could say, okay, let's make it made out of cast iron here. Notice it gives the density of cast iron, which is built into the software, and so it approximates the mass. If it's made out of iron, it'd be almost about 9.5 kilograms. You could also add lots of materials here, stainless steel, different types of rubber, plastics, different things. Let's say I make it out of steel here. Okay, so I can click on steel. If it's made out of steel, it gives me the mass, 10.5 kilo, about 10.35 kilograms there. All right, it also gives me the volume of the part, so these are some nice geometric properties about it, which is great to have. All right. If you're working on a bigger project where you have multiple people working on multiple parts in an assembly, you can add lots of other things here, such as a stock number, a revision number. You can say the engineer who marked off on it, approximate cost of the part, creation date, lots of different options here that would be very useful if you're working in a bigger company, have lots of people working on one part. For example, if the design state, let's say I'm not finished with it yet, you can leave it as a work in progress. Or if you know, hey, I'm finished, I don't want anyone else to edit it, you can change this design state to say released here. Okay. Alright, so let's click apply. Let's close that. Notice the color changed a little bit because there's a color associated with stainless steel. The last thing I can do here is just go through and add in those extra colors that you see in the drawing here, the green and the red color. So I can do that quickly. I can select this surface. You can select any surface you want. I want this one. Hold the control key to select another surface. Alright, I was holding the control key down to select those four. And on this drop down menu you can select any type of color you want. What color do we have? Let's make it dark green. I can do this one and this one here, and let's go make that, it doesn't matter, let's go make that a yellow color. Okay, so you see here changing the color of the surfaces. Alright, again, don't forget to save your work here. Alright, so reviewing what we've done, we've learned how to use extrusion here. We've learned how to take extrusions and make them all the way through, or just extrude them a certain distance, okay, which is what we did on this second extrusion. We've learned how to make edits. For example, let's say I want this extrusion to be a little shorter. Rather than this distance being 40, let's make it 20. Okay, where would I do that? Well, that was done under the length of the extrusion too. So I can double click that extrusion, change this from 40 to 20, and now that's changed that depth of that extrusion. So you can see the advantages of a parametric modeling software. When the whole part is defined by parameters, it's easy for me to make design changes with the part here. So I hope that was helpful. We've learned how to do the mirror feature. We've learned how to use the hole feature. Yeah, let's look at this hole feature again here. The hole that I used was a regular hole. If you click on that hole feature though, you could change it to a counter bore hole. Okay, where let's make this one 20, let's make the counter depth 4. Let's look what that looks like. Notice all these holes now have an extra little counter bore. So that whole feature is really powerful. You can change it to different types of holes. I can do a countersink hole. The purpose of a countersink hole like this would be so that you can screw a screw into that hole, and the head of the screw is flush with this top surface. So you can do lots of different holes like that. Very, very, very powerful program. I hope you can apply this to do your next lab. Good luck, guys.